Well, actually, this is our first one. Respect. Shout out to our DJ, Werner von Buren. That cracks me up every single time. Welcome to the Real Fake Talk Show, episode 1 of what we hope to be many. I'm your host, Steve, ex-corporate on Twitch, Marston. Today's guest, we have Stephen Olsen from the University of Wisconsin. He is studying law, was a former RN. Well, I guess he's still currently an RN. They don't really strip that from you, do they? Either way, we had a beautiful conversation. As he's studying law in the great state of Wisconsin, we thought we'd be able to have a completely objective look at the Kyle Rittenhouse case, which doesn't feel like anyone's able to do these days. So just cutting down some of the fundamentals of what happened, which ends up leading us into a pretty deep conversation about society. And you know what? Just watch it and tell us what you think. If you do like the content, hit like and subscribe. I don't know. That's what people say, right? Smash that like button. If you're enjoying it, thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Don't hit the dislike button. Something, my mental health. You know what I'm saying? Let's hit today's sponsors before we get into the interview. First sponsor of the day. And by the way, they're only sponsoring this one episode. So if you'd like to sponsor future episodes, please hit me at therealfaketalkshow@gmail.com. Once again, therealfaketalkshow@gmail.com. And we'd love to hook you guys up. For today, though, we do got to shout out to our sponsors, Product X. Since I've been taking Product X, I've personally experienced a whole hell of a lot better Y, which has in turn led to a fantastic Z. Product X. Also, Product A. Thank you to Product A. Since taking Product A, I've been swatting away all the B's and C's and really giving my best. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Olsen. Take it away, Steve. I really hope the transition works. I'm going to look a fool. That's weird. We are live. And I am nervous. And this is the Real Fake Talk Show. The very first episode. So expect it to be terrible. And if it is somehow good, we did it, Pop. We did it. What we're going to be doing today is we have a special guest with us. We're going to have a musical guest today. Wink, wink. Might have to edit this one in after. But you know what? It's fine. We have the musical guest coming with us. A couple housekeeping notes for the day. We're going to be doing this live on Twitch on the weekends on the channel X Corporate. So if you want to come check us out live, you can come check us out live. However, we do have the alerts off. The chat's going to be down to minimal so we can really get into these interviews. Kind of like early Joe Rogan when nobody watched him. So we have today a channel favorite. Someone who, if you've been watching the stream, you know from coming in. His name is Steve ORN in the stream. His name in real life is Stephen Olsen. He is a former registered nurse who decided to continue his knowledge, continue his journey, and wanted to go do something else to give back even more than registered nurses already do, and become a lawyer and fight for what's right, which is one of the reasons we hit it off so well. Steve ORN, would you like to say hello? Let's get you up on this incredibly futuristic. Oh, there, look at that. What a great start. What a great start. You know what I'm saying? Nailed it. That's my iTunes playlist. Shout out Apple. There's a freebie for you.
I was just going to say that this is like a higher, it's like CNN, but better production value. That's basically what this is. It's what it feels like.
Right?
You know?
We're going to hope to spread as much propaganda as them as well on this channel. My personal favorite thing. I'm a pot stirrer, Steve, as you've grown to love over the last little bit.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know your triggers, so that's why I just mentioned the words, and I'll just get you. You'll talk for hours. I know you will. So I'll just say it. It'll be good. I say CNN. I say a few things, and I get them going.
Yeah, right. Take away riots, shut down protests. It's all right. But once again, just taking a quick look at chat with Steve. A lot of people saying you look amazing. I do agree with them. Once again, we will be ignoring chat, much like the American government. Well, all governments ignore protests around the world, and as does the media. Steve, the reason we wanted to have this chat is because there's something going on in the world that you happen to be right in the heart of, so to speak. And there's the Kyle Rittenhouse. I feel like everything's a swear word. You know what I mean? The Kyle Rittenhouse. Like, beep it out. But the Kyle Rittenhouse case captivated America. I like to call it the white OJ case. And it did take place directly in Wisconsin there. And you studying law in Wisconsin, we thought, what better insight could we get from yourself? But right before we get into that, Steve, do you want to give the people, this is episode 1, so we just want to give the people a little bit about you first, and tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I think, yeah, you introduced me well. Registered nurse, going to law school. I have 2 daughters and a beautiful wife. Girl dad and all that. Yeah, also extremely nervous, just like you. So it's we're off to a good start.
Oh, man, love it.
Just edit every time we say we're nervous. We're gonna edit that out. Edit that right out.
Mm-hmm.
And currently, big update in my life. I'm watching the Packers game right here on my computer in front of me. I'm not watching it actually.
Thank you.
I just have the score update. So if it gives me notification every time someone scores. So there's only 2 minutes left though. So don't worry. I'll only be distracted for 2 minutes while we beat down the Minnesota Vikings.
Regional game.
Yeah. It's our it's like the enemy from the north because we don't really include Canada as they're not really a threat. So, and Minnesota Vikings aren't really a threat either. So that's how that goes. So that's my introduction.
No, well, thank you so much. I forgot to leave out your beautiful kids, your beautiful wife, and thanks for giving us that. You Wisconsin boys are just such loyal Packers and Bucks fans, aren't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Can't take you away from it. I love that. We can jump right into it. Hilarious, the chat's going off. It's impossible to ignore that. It's going to turn into a full-on roast by the end of this.
Oh boy.
Pretty great, but it's all good. This is what keeps me loose. This is what keeps us. This is just a chat, right, Steve? This is why I loved it. It was going to be, I wanted to do this live on Twitch so we didn't get all weird and like recording. Like, is that the perfect thing to say? We're going to say some offensive shit. It's going to come out and we're just going to have some fun. With the Packers, or you said that Canada wasn't an enemy to you, just a friendly neighbor to the north. Wait till we get taken over by a certain... Well, wait till you get realized that we've been taken over by a certain country and that we now have the second greatest landmass of just right above you. You know what? We'll save that one for later on in the episode, Steve-O. Let's get right into this Kyle Rittenhouse case. Just to give a summary to people who have been avoiding the media. Good for you, by the way. Absolutely fantastic. There was a case where a gentleman by the name of Jason Blake was murdered by or shot by police. Let's just use terms instead of feeling into it at all. But he was shot by police. It caused riots that went on for days during the pandemic. And during this time, there was riots. Buildings were being lit on fire. There was a lot of hostility in the streets. Police were purposely turned down at a lot of the violence, and a lot of stuff escalated pretty quickly. Within this craziness, there was a 17-year-old kid who decided to take it upon himself to protect. He goes into the riots. Once again, we'll take out all everything on the sides of the story. The events were he ended up shooting and killing 3 men, Steve-O?
Yeah, killing 2 people and I believe injuring an individual, shooting him through the bicep, I believe. So.
Okay, perfect. So he killed 2, injured 1, and then was put on trial to see if it was fair that he stood his ground or if he was indeed guilty of murder. Pretty good synopsis for someone who doesn't pay attention to mainstream shit. Pretty good.
No, yeah, for sure. You hit the high points for sure. And you correctly stated that I am an expert. 2 months of law school. I mean,
hey,
basically, I'm a seasoned veteran. Let's just call balls and strikes as they come. So
You're
the way
top
it
class
is.
on, you're top tier on Reddit. You know what I mean? A 2-month law
Yeah.
school, that's pretty much the CEO of Reddit.
No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like first day, actually, just when I got accepted into law school, I changed my Reddit tag to just lawyer, and it just said like and every time I said something, I said, "Well, excuse me, I am a lawyer," and like
Yeah,
it just
is someone
why not?
studying law in the great state of Wisconsin? We figured that. No,
Yeah,
and I love that completely, and that's kind of why we decided to have this conversation, because you in your classes are actually talking about the Rittenhouse case. You're getting some insight and using it as education. And I have the brain of a crazy person and think everything is not what it seems. Let's just leave it at that. That's a little. No, I can't even say it. I'm so nervous about talking on YouTube. But let's get into the trial here, Steve. There was a lot of speculation on the outside. There was a lot of. I really don't know where to start with this. This is such a heavy case. Like, if we talk about the racial context, the media built anxiety that's been put into this,
yeah,
the bipartisanship of it, the white versus black, the left versus right, the Second Amendment versus whatever you want to call it, not the Second Amendment. It's a lot of bipartisanship is the only way I can think of it.
yeah.
That led to a pretty tough foreground to the case. Now, I almost don't know where to go. Do you want to start with just the actual legality of it, and then we can get into what we think is going on, the subtones of everything? Because I do want
Yeah.
to find out your opinion on what just happened in a legal manner.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's a good starting point. Just kind of from a high level, an important thing to note is that criminal law is in the U.S. is structured in a way that each state gets to make essentially their own criminal code. It's passed by the legislature and is codified in a form called a statute. And so whenever someone commits a crime, they have broken the letter of the law, the statute, and charges are filed by a prosecutor. The prosecutor acts as not necessarily as an individual that represents one person. Obviously, the defense attorney represents a particular individual, a specific defendant, but the prosecutor is essentially, to some degree, especially in these homicide cases, representing almost society and bringing, the people's voice against, the elements of society that we deem not good, criminal behavior. And so, yeah, I mean, the big thing to focus on.
Steve, can I stop you right there? Sorry, just
Sure.
so we can keep everyone who is not in law school right now on track with me. I need to know some things. When we're deciding who the defense attorney is, when we're deciding who the prosecutor is, you said the prosecutor kind of acts on the people, or the people. Yep. I love that. Us as a society, they're speaking for us in the courtroom. Shout out Littlefinger. We'll get to him in a minute. Who decides who that prosecutor is? And on the other side, the defense attorney, is that chosen by Rittenhouse? Is it determined by the city, the state, or Mike Lindell from My Pillow? Who determines that?
Yeah, no, those are really good questions. The way that, I mean, structures for prosecutorial systems can vary state by state. Essentially, typically you have each county will have a district attorney, and then kind of prosecutors that fall under them. For larger counties, there's sometimes prosecutors that work directly for specific cities and X, Y, and Z. And some counties, like in rural Wisconsin, maybe have just one district attorney that only works part-time, and they're pretty much the whole prosecutor for the entire county. So it's, population specific and that type of thing. And in terms of whether charges get brought, it's really up to the discretion of the prosecutor themselves.
Really?
Obviously, the primary factor that influences decision making for a prosecutor is whether they think they can make the charges stick.
Mhm.
They don't want to be bringing a lot of charges against people and then losing. So more often than not, when a prosecutor brings charges, it never even gets to the trial stage. What happens is the prosecutor will bring charges that will, obviously, depending on the situation, typically the defendant is arrested by police. They act as the law enforcement. They act as basically the arresting arm of the law enforcement system, and they'll arrest the individual. And there's a number of factors that go into that depend on the case. But they're essentially charged by the prosecutor, and at that point, the defendant is allowed to hire their own defense attorney at that point. That's obviously typically a matter of resources, financial resources. And if they don't have the resources to hire a prosecutor, they are entitled to a public defender by law. That's something that was kind of passed via Supreme Court decision in the U.S. So in every criminal case, every citizen of the U.S. has a right to an attorney. So that's not the case in a civil context, but in a criminal context, that is the case. So yeah.
All right. Thanks for that rundown. I love the insight. Like I said, it's like my first thought was, who hired this guy? Star of the case. One of the many stars of this case. And I hate to say stars, but to me, everything's a friggin' movie these days. And fresh off of Game of Thrones, there was Littlefinger, who couldn't find work, and now is the prosecutor. He took a lot of light for just a lot of the things that were said and the way they were said. So in such a high profile case, is there like a tier system in what is chosen as far as like prosecutors? Like, did they go for the best of the best, or did we just kind of SMD there?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I mean, obviously, like I said, big picture, the district attorney is the top of the food chain. So in the most high profile cases, I mean, typically it would be the district attorney would only truly step in as the representative. Not in these. This is. I mean, yes, this is a high profile case, but it's still low level on the sense that it's just one individual that's committed a crime. A district attorney would step in really like something that has multiple defendants or is against more of a corporate entity or whatever else that has criminal behavior. And so they're typically kind of, their time is taken up with that and then delegating from there. I don't know much about the prosecutors in this case, and obviously having not, done a criminal trial myself, I can't speak too much to the details of X, Y, and Z. But my professor at the University of Wisconsin is the head of the Public Defender Project, and from his perspective, he said that the prosecutors did make some serious missteps with their organizations, in the way that they presented evidence and the way that they presented their theory of the case. He said that there were some pretty glaring, faux pas or whatever else, especially considering the fact that they knew that it was going to be live streamed the entire time, and like you said, kind of high profile. So that your instinct in terms of that there was some oddness happening is true. Probably is mostly due to lack of preparation or organization, not really in terms of any type of misconduct or whatever else. So
Totally. And we'll dissect that piece by piece. So I like right off the bat, you and I were actually chatting throughout this trial just for fun, sending messages back. You had made a statement, if this is not considered a mistrial, or I can't remember the other word you used, you'll eat your shoes. Like, it was we noticed a lot of stuff that was just going on throughout. And this is where I don't know. Let's just get into the mind of the normie, right? So the mind of the normie thinking, watching this and no law background, and then keep in mind everyone watches Suits, right? I see your profile picture here on Discord is Suits. So we have everyone has a certain kind of a mindset of what they imagine a court of law to be. Very suave, like you look right now. You're painting a great picture. Good looking lawyers getting in there, making some. And then a very smooth talk. The judge is this all-knowing Wizard of Oz type feature who is completely well-spoken, knows everything, can rattle off cases, all this stuff off the top of their head. When we go in now, we're not seeing suits. We're seeing what looks like, to be fair, a real-life court. However, when we see this and then we see some of the other stuff, everyone's an internet lawyer these days, and everyone's an internet expert. We all know exactly what to say, what's going on in court. I personally have a degree in internet law. It's useful everywhere on the internet. For that, though, you see a lot of people saying like, oh, the prosecution guy is purposely blowing it. There was a point in the case where the judge had claimed to tell him not say something. They walk out of recess and he says it. The judge dismisses the jury and he says, hey, WTF. And then the defense lawyer, Vince Vaughn, pops up and he's like, hey, that's absolutely crazy. This is like we just told him that. I think he's trying to throw intentionally, as you gamers say out there. So was there anything of that you saw where you thought that they were intentionally going for a mistrial? And this is very subjective, and I understand in law, no one's trying to lose, right? Like in sports, like I hate when someone's like no one's trying to physically lose. Unless you're the Edmonton Oilers in hockey or insert basketball team to burn here.
Yeah, so well, it's an interesting question, and I think that to the point that I made to you via message, I think we were speaking a little bit more about the aspect of appeal. I think that an appeal is definitely going to happen. It was especially evident when the judge took one of the charges, probably the only charge that was pretty much a slam dunk. Which is a weapons possession under the age of 18, and then didn't send it to the jury because of essentially, what's called vagueness or overbroadness. He essentially looked at the statute and said it's not clear enough, and so he took it out at the last minute. But that would likely be appealed, so I think that still will likely happen.
So just once again, I'm gonna drop it down for us normies here, step by step. So when you say appeal, so that charge number one didn't make it through. So that one wasn't on the list of things he was charged with. And if that ends up, if this court ends up finding him not guilty on the other three charges, they can still appeal for the charge they didn't charge him on.
Yeah. So the way that appeal works is you have the trial court level, which is the bottom level, and that's where what we just witnessed, that was where a trial occurs. That's where the jury system occurs in X, Y, and Z. That's the only time where there's ever a debate about matters of fact, right? And so the prosecutor has a theory of the case based on certain facts that they believe are the truth, and the defense has a theory of the case based on certain facts. And also there's an interpretation of those facts and X, Y, and Z. And so it's the jury's job, essentially. They're termed in the legal system the fact finder, and their purpose is to kind of weed through all the facts and figure out what makes the most sense, and then apply it appropriately to the law. All right, but any issue where like I said, they're focused on the facts, and that's fine. But if there's a mess up from the legal perspective, where there's an issue of law that is at error, right? If there's a mess up where the judge made a mistake, because they're the person that kind of dictates, like I said, where do charges even go to the jury, that's a matter of law. That's not a matter of fact. That's not a jury matter. And all matters of law are able to be appealed to the second level. That's the Court of Appeals. And then the appeals court is required to rule on every appeal that comes to them. And then you also have a Supreme Court in every state. And that is that court doesn't have to take the appeal. So if you go up to the appeals court, the second tier appeals court, and then they make a decision that also you don't like, you can try to go to the Supreme Court, but they're not required to look at your case and make a judgment on it. So
That's the state
there's
Supreme
always a
Court,
chance.
right? Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. I remember I heard you say state Supreme Court, and then there's probably a greater
Yeah.
Supreme Court on a national level. You'd imagine.
Yeah, so there's everywhere in the U.S. is a dual sovereignty jurisdiction, which means that the laws of state government and also the laws of the federal government apply no matter where you are in the U.S. Obviously, when you move to different states have different laws, so those apply to you. But the federal laws apply evenly across everyone. And there's an entire system for the federal system that everyone uses. So there's obviously there's essentially the same thing at trial court level. For the federal system, there's an appeal level, and that's kind of multiple states all come to an appeal court. And then there's the Supreme Court of the United States of America.
Supreme Court. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just read a comment that made me laugh, and I've been trying to ignore these children in the chat. But someone said we need more Alex Jones energy in here. Yell at us, which is funny. That is where I get all my sourcing from directly. It's the only source of information that I intake, other than you, Steve ORN. So it's like I'll say, like, "Hey, I heard this from Alex. What do you think?" And then Steve's like, "Whoa, okay. Here's another point of view." But let's get into some of the Alex Jones part of stuff, right? Because I think as far as like the state, you've done a really good job outlining what the system does, what the system's purpose was, what we saw, what the point of the jury was, how the prosecution was selected, and what they brought to the table. Did a really good job outlining that. In the end, he got found not guilty. Spoiler alert for everyone about to watch the film starring Shia LaBeouf as Kyle Rittenhouse, which I still think that was Shia LaBeouf in the courtroom as Kyle Rittenhouse. I don't think he's a great character actor. Shout out Shia LaBeouf, friend of the show. He's not gonna like that one. He doesn't like a lot of things these days. Maybe he does though, and we can become boys. I don't know. I'm really speaking out of turn. If you'd like to come on the show, call me Shy. But with this, when he got found not guilty, once again, I'm being a little tentative with my words because one sentence is going to take us down two different train of thoughts that I have, and one of them is the media's point of view. So just as the quickest rundown, because I haven't introduced myself to the Real Fake Talk Show, is I have a 10-year advertising within media and journalism, working for the largest newspaper and media chain in Canada. So I have a very, unique perspective as far as the media and advertising and journalism goes. So let's go down that path right now. In the way that the media is portraying this, they wanted to make it more than the case it was. To the point where it affected the jury, where some of the jury said they were still deliberating because they were nervous about backlash through the media and what their friends, family, what personal threats to their friends and family might happen. What do you think the media's role was in this case?
Sure.
Or how do you think it affected it? Or what do you think's going on with the media and its coverage with what we're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple kind of questions embedded in that question, but I think from a high level perspective, I think that having a media, that exists in, some source of news that exists in your community and in your society, I mean, that's crucial. That's essential. I think it was called the Fourth Estate by the founders of the U.S. I think they stole that from some French philosopher, but essentially, it's important to have these entities be able to increase transparency. We want to know what powerful people are doing. We want to know what's happening in society, and we want to know the takeaways, right? The problem that kind of you've identified is that in a system where media and everyone is beholden to financial necessity. Obviously, they have to make money to first of all survive, but then obviously they want to make more money because they want to buy things. It incentivizes that media to create stories that are kind of like truth, but are driven fundamentally by a narrative or a story that people want to hear. Because if you're telling people what they want to hear, then they're going to keep engaging in your content, and then that's going to rack up the dollars for you. So I think that's kind of the big picture thing that happens behind the scenes, is that there's this, perverse incentive to sell a certain viewpoint or to sell a narrative, as opposed to selling the truth, because sometimes the nuance and the complexity and kind of just the boringness of the truth isn't very sexy and doesn't make much money, doesn't get a lot of clicks, and so that those messages kind of die out, and the more provocative messages are what thrive. So that's
Very well
that's
said.
more of a high level perspective, but in terms of this case in particular,
Yes, please.
It's clear. I mean, it's clear that there's, in the U.S., I think the partisan divide is many people say is much deeper than many places, and it's evident that you have two sides that are both shouting in this instance, and they're both getting the truth completely wrong. Neither of them are really hitting on the truth of the matter. They're both just feeding into their specific ecosystem that feeds their side, which says that this is what the truth is, and then the enemy. So there's a couple of things. The concept of vigilante justice obviously is on display here with Rittenhouse. He's come to a city that is not his home, but he does have strong ties to it, and he's concerned about protests, and he's concerned about destruction of property, which makes sense to some degree. Obviously, people's livelihoods, and you got a business, and that you put a lot of emotion into that. It's important to note that it isn't legal in Wisconsin, or really anywhere, to kill someone because they're destroying property. And so to enter the situation, strapped up with an AR-15, saying you got to protect the property, it doesn't really make sense, because obviously you have law enforcement, you have police officers for a reason. And obviously there's this whole subculture of Second Amendment, and some people see words as dirty. There's militia, there's whatever. I mean, some people really like the word militia, and they see themselves as a strong militia member with their Second Amendment rights. So
I was going to shout out somebody, but that is very inappropriate. You know who you are. Calling you out right now. No, I'm not. No shout outs, but he knows who he is. Got a little channel beef with this guy. Very well said. And I love this. And I want to maybe use your answer to kind of go down a different road instead of, and I think that will kind of get a couple of my viewpoints here. Let's dissect the narratives. So we have this bipartisanship narrative, and I think you did a great job of going down the middle, just facts. Draw two circles, what happened versus the story about what's happening. When we go down these narratives, this is the things that disgust me. Shout out CNN, the best network in, I can't even say that with straight face. They are reporting today, it's like white man acquitted of shooting 3 black men. That's how they broke that down. Not 17-year-old, like nothing, just very white man. It very much feels like in America, Canada, everywhere you see it, it's just like a poke. And it's like, let's get civil unrest, civil unrest, civil unrest, civil unrest. And you see videos on the internet circulating on Twitter where you have BLM supporters with their opposition outside the Rittenhouse courtroom, and they're sharing pizza. So like we always talk about it, and you and I are pretty good examples. We're very stark differences on our views. However, there's so much more that puts us together that we always come together. But that seems to be, you want to use your language, not mine. It is mine. The narrative. It's a narrative that seems to be pushed out, that we cannot coincide. We cannot be together. We cannot get along. We cannot just watch a 17-year-old kid who may or may not be FBI trained. See, I'm going to ask you about that later. How does a 17-year-old know how to use an AR like that? My God, just walk out. And where was his mother? Where was his mother, man? My mom would not even allow me to the end of the street at 17. Shout out my mom. Great mom. But this guy's mom dropped him off at riots. But there's just so much stuff that we have that is going towards the civil unrest. The fact that one of the people that were murdered was convicted not once, not twice, 10 times of raping children with penetration. That's incredibly insane that's always, and not that that's like the reason he killed him, right? I don't think death and a lot of shooting, because we're from Canada, right? We handle our problems with maple syrup and donuts in a couple stories and then a hockey game. But in America, like we just seem to put away facts on things, which I'm even walking this one back right now because I don't know if the like, you know what I mean? But you see online and it just creates like nobody can take kind of a moral understanding of what happens upon themselves because they're so pot committed with their own point of view and they don't want to look bad. They don't want to look, they want to avoid looking, or they want to look good. They want to avoid looking bad. They are like, the one thing that I saw today was a Twitter thread, and it's like, how come no one's reporting that one of the guys he killed was convicted of raping 10 children with penetration? And then the comment underneath it was, well, was he raping kids at the time he was shot? And I was like, both those comments make me severely uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And I feel like we're going down just a very scary route as a society where it's pitchfork and torches instead of understanding. And that's why I made the comment of the OJ trial. Like, this is very divisive, whatever, where it's really pulling people into places it shouldn't be. And my worry is whenever I see these conflicts being swept in, especially by the media, that there's something going on just directly behind it that I don't like. And I never know what it is, which is why I always get crazy, get Alex Jonesy, try to find out who's eating babies for their own progression. But in reality, it's not crazy to think that over the last X amount of years, there's been I don't want to say attack, because I don't want to seem like a pro anything. You and I don't like fitting into groups, Steve, but there's been a challenge on the Second Amendment. And is there a right to have guns? And is there, so when we see a lot of stuff that's being motivated by media, that's being elevated by media, that has a certain narrative, as you'd say, by both sides. Because the thing that I've started to realize is that it's almost like fear porn for your own channel. Alex Jones is fear porn for one section of people. The media is fear porn for another section. Like, Alex Jones is like, they're coming for our guns. You're gonna take our guns. You're gonna take our guns. You want guns? We will fight you till we die. And then it's like the other guy's like, well, guns are killing people. Like, why are we giving guns to people? And it's two people trying to just drive home one part of it. And then like there's cases and people dying. And it almost feels like the humane aspect of the case is always lost behind these narratives. That bothers me. And I almost don't know how to take any of these cases seriously, how to give the proper empathy to these cases, how to give the proper, like, did this guy throw the case on purpose? Because it always seems like people are marching towards something bigger than what we see. Is that fair to say, or is that a little offside?
No, I think that's 100% on point. I think that kind of like what you're saying, people get too wrapped up into their perspectives and into the, that, like, we've talked about this before, this whole confirmation bias. You see everything you see around you doesn't inform you about some new reality, just reinforces these deep-seated notions you already have about what reality actually is. You pointed right to the end there about the idea of let's really just talk about from a human perspective what's going on. Obviously, in this situation, two people died. And that's concerning. We should always, no matter what happens, no matter what the law says, and no matter what the best result is based on the way everything is currently structured, we would all, we should all hope that we're in a situation where people, wouldn't have died. So that's a big point. And I think that along with that, people are, turning Kyle Rittenhouse also into an evil person and a white supremacist and whatever. And, obviously no one is stepping back and saying, what was I doing at 17? Right. First of all, it's a long time ago that I was 17.
I was training with assault rifles for years so that I was perfectly affluent in the streets with him if time came. If the time came and I was 17, I'd be ready, Steve, just like Mr. Rittenhouse. That one still gets
Sure.
me. But no, I love what you said. Have humanity and understand the 17-year-old. That's what I was trying to do. Because like you know, when I worked in for the media, I worked in sales for 15 years, right? Corporate sales for 15 years. I have a very good knack of reading people, body language, just a lot of the situation. And it was real tough to watch a lot of that case. Rittenhouse, once again, can I put myself in someone who is 17 years old being charged with 2 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and have the world looking at you as, like you said, a white supremacist, being painted all these labels, being literally wished death upon? Can I put myself in his position for a second and say, if I was in that case, would I fake cry or look like I have crocodile tears? I guess I couldn't tell you how I react. I'm an ugly crier. But I don't know if it's just because my mind is so messed up with the world that we live in, with the Netflix and everything, that everything feels like theater. But a lot of this stuff to me, like I want to just point out a couple things that were sus to me within the case. We'll start out with Littlefinger. Littlefinger was really just constantly bringing up facts, like just really poor cases. Like once again, I'm watching Harvey Specter. I'm watching Mike Ross. I'm watching these killers in the courtroom. Then I watch this guy, okay, who ended up leading to his own death in Game of Thrones. Spoiler alert, with his own conniving aspect. But he's saying things that are like, hey, did you know you have 300 confirmed kills in Call of Duty? Is the point of Call of Duty to kill people who advance on you? And then like the kid is like, it's a game, and everyone else watching is like, what is this really part of the court? And then he goes and calls another defense. Like, he calls the witness up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here. He calls the witness up, and that witness that he called out, the prosecutor who's trying to prove the defendant guilty, admitted that he was marching towards Kyle Rittenhouse with a fucking gun. Excuse my French, Canadian. Like, it's just so, like, I don't, it feels like a lot of this stuff was like, let's just get a lot of stuff so we can get people angry in it. We're going to blow this case. He's going to get off. We're going to put bricks in the alley to whoever loses. We'll chat about that one later quickly. There just seems like maybe it's just what they wanted the public to see, so that's what they release, and they don't put all the grueling stuff. But it just seemed like I said, time and time again within the course, it was amateur hour. And it borderline felt like theater, but like bad theater, because we're used to suits. So in these cases, is there like a legal way that you can give me the other side of my brain? You know how my brain works. I question everything. Literally, life has made me beyond cynical. I'm jaded. I cannot stand 90% of the things I see because I think there's something going on behind it. Illuminati. You didn't hear that. For real, on the normal side of things, Steve, this is why I love your brain. What did you see when you saw those obvious missteps in the case, knowing that the media is pushing a narrative, knowing everything you know? If you had to take yourself out of the legality, but look at it from a third point of view, what would you say?
Sure. Well, that's a good question. I think that, well, the big point that I think about is that you're highlighting a few key moments, which is fine to do, but it's the common cherry picking fallacy that the media does, right? The media takes, you take an interview that lasts an hour and you cherry pick one quote, you know what I mean? And you say that defined the whole interview, right? Or you take, there's 4 days. There's 4 or 5 days where the prosecution is making their theory of the case and bringing up multiple witnesses and putting exhibits on trial, and they're submitting documents and X, Y, and Z. And like, the media is not incentivized to really have a complex, nuanced understanding, as I mentioned. And so their goal is to just put out the things that seem the most provocative or seem the most, X, Y, and Z. And then, obviously digging into the prosecutor themselves. Like I said, I'm not a practicing lawyer. I don't know the typical thing for prosecutors. Obviously, the primary motive of a prosecutor when bringing charges, no one forces them to bring charges. It's 100% up to them whether they bring charges or not. And they typically only bring charges if they think that they have a reasonable chance of winning. That being said, that is the overriding motive in pretty much all cases. Now, are there times when there are other motives that are at play and other things that influence the decision, whether it's some type of political things or whatever else, or blah, blah, blah. To some degree, that's possible. It's possible to have those things in there. And I don't want to discount that those are a possibility. But these prosecutors have to think mostly about their long-term legal career, and their legal career isn't about politics. It's not about
that guy's done. Hey, you better his career's a wrap. You better go back into acting and see if Game of Thrones is doing a sequel, because yikes. And that's from a layman's. I don't know. I wouldn't hire that guy ever.
Right, exactly. So they're not. They're really de-incentivized to look like idiots up there, right? They don't want to look like idiots. They don't want to bring charges when there's no chance of winning and those types of things. And obviously, because their motives are they're a practicing attorney and they want to keep practicing as an attorney, and they don't want the spotlight on them, because most of these individuals are just trying to put their head down and do their job. And it's the media that kind of put the spotlight on them and says, "Hey, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Did you do this because you had political motives or whatever?" And it's like, well, no, I'm just a human being that's doing their job, and there's a lot of things that influence their decision making. But suffice to say, I think that like I said, big picture, they could have done a better job with the case. I mean, that based on what I've heard from my professors, who are kind of more experts in that area. And in terms of the mistrial, obviously the defense attorney's perspective was they're trying to mess it up so that you can get a second shot at it. So if you have a mistrial, that still allows you to bring charges again, because double jeopardy doesn't apply to a mistrial.
Explain that right away. Double jeopardy, we all know, is the second round of Jeopardy. R.I.P. Alec Trebek, Canadian icon.
Aaron Rodgers is in charge of Jeopardy. That's when you call it. That's a double Jeopardy.
Aaron Rodgers, the legend. That's gonna take me into it. That's one of my Kill Bill alarm triggers. You smart man, like you said. You know my triggers. We'll get into Aaron a little later. For the thing that you said, I just want to clarify this on the mistrial and the appeal. So is this a tactic? As if the trial's not going well, you try to get a mistrial so that you can get your shit together, check your info, huddle up, and get another shot at it? Or is it just oh crap, we're gonna lose this. Let's lose this. Just let's just try to get this out so we can have another shot. It both ends up the same thing. Is the mistrial a tactic used in prosecution if they realize they're losing?
Right. So there's a couple of things. So obviously, the concept of intentionally kind of throwing it in the hopes of getting a mistrial, that's a 1 in a million type thing. First of all, just because the risk is so high, it's not worth it typically. Mm-hmm. Second of all, you can't call for a mistrial based on your own conduct. So you can't ask the judge, "Hey, I want a motion for a mistrial based on all the crap that I messed up."
No, he'd be baiting the defense lawyer, which is why I think he made the comment, "This guy's trying to get a mistrial." So exactly. I just mainly want to know, if he gets the mistrial, does that have to be declared within the time, or can they still call a mistrial right now after the verdict's been said?
Yeah, my understanding that a mistrial motion, it can happen in the post-trial, what's called the post-trial period, after a verdict has come down. It's complicated. In this specific case, not to dig too far into it, but in this specific case, obviously, the defense attorney did what every defense attorney would do in this case, which they don't just motion for a mistrial, they motion for a mistrial with prejudice. And when you motion for a mistrial, now the modifier of being with prejudice is that it removes that ability for it to be tried again. And so anytime that a judge, a judge can move in a certain way with prejudice, meaning we're not going to talk about it again. We're not going to approach the topic again, whatever. So basically, this whole with prejudice idea is just closing the door, right? Things have gotten so bad that we're not even going to come back into that topic ever again. And so, in this case, the defense attorney did what they would naturally do, which is a motion for a mistrial with prejudice, which, if that's what the prosecutor was going for, that there would be a mistrial, and then they would be able to get a second shot, a second bite at the apple, let's say, as a legal thing. But it's just rarely going to happen, because you have to have a really dumb defense attorney that would motion for a mistrial, but not for a mistrial with prejudice, or maybe a judge that would grant the mistrial, but not with prejudice. I mean, it's pretty out there that a prosecutor would actually be moving in a direction where they're like, oh, I really messed up, I'm gonna shoot for the mistrial strategy to try to redo it. It's just not really feasible.
That's
and
more
really
television. That's like the stuff you'll see on Suits. Like, hey, Mike, you need to throw this, because we need to get those girls in here who know everything. The witness can't be. Yeah. It's okay. So thanks for painting that fallacy. Here's another one from my dark part of my mind. Okay. And we'll leave this. We can get out of the legality. You can take your student, your law hat off if you want, or we can go into law. If you do, you might set the ladies off. We might. You know what? I don't think your wife would be too happy about that. He's taking ladies and guys out there. We don't judge. And insert. Oh man, let's not go down this road. For the footage that was captured. This is what led me to make my fun little thing where this kid's FBI trained, and he's like, here's what was weird to me. We had drone footage of the whole incident. The whole incident was just happened to be caught on drone footage by the FBI, one of the letter organizations.
Yep.
Now, without going into my full preconceived thought of the FBI and their role in society and what they're doing, there's only two things that could be possible here for me in my mind. And I want you to expand my train of thought. Maybe I'll even look into the chat if anyone wants to go into this. Is when an FBI footage is directly over a crime scene that is a high profile case in the nation that is now taken over media, it has now become a very polarizing topic within society. When that happens, I can only think of one of two ways. It has something to do with being planned, or there's some type of action by the FBI in there. They have some type of malintent almost to the situation, or the FBI has drones all over the damn country and everyone's being watched at all times. Either way, there's a little bit of a breach of us as us as a society and as people on the outside making a perspective. So I kind of want to know, maybe from whatever point you want to look at it, did you hear about the FBI footage being in there? We can also talk about the fact that it was edited by the offense team to lower the quality before it was submitted. There's video evidence of that showing that it was reduced in quality, so they couldn't see the full thing. You can take that with where you were, because that one is just not sitting right with me.
Sure. So I guess I'll kind of paint the picture of what happened in my mind when I learned that that the FBI had a drone in this specific situation, right? It seems in your mind that you were fairly shocked by that, or at least kind of had a perception of what that meant. Mm-hmm. In my mind, well, I mean, the FBI is fundamentally tasked with, they're essentially the police for federal laws, right? So you have, obviously, typical police have very finite jurisdictions, and they have finite areas they cover, and they're enforcing specific laws of municipalities and states and X, Y, and Z, right? Mm-hmm. The FBI is obviously federal, so they're really in terms of if someone's going to possibly be breaking some federal laws, that's where they get involved.
And in their defense, there was the riots going on at the time, so they were covering all the riots. So I guess just to go on that point, what takes that out of the state jurisdiction? Because this wasn't a federal case. This was a state case, if I'm not mistaken. So if the federal, which it's their job to watch us, It's their job to have complete surveillance. Shout out the Patriot Act, and all the measures that are being implemented since the topic for another day. It's their job to kind of keep everything that could be a federal crime. So in their, I guess the state versus federal question, when they're surveying what could be a federal crime, but now this crime is now considered state, they're still well within their right to provide the footage, I guess, to the prosecutor, because it's still like they have it. I guess it goes into the question of trying to think of the right word here without going down a rabbit hole. I hope you get where I'm going with this. Like it kind of gives like a humanity based question again. Like how much are we just gonna? Is this 1984? You know what I mean? And we are just constant surveillance. Everything you do is under watch. There's footage, and it can be used.
Yeah. No, I think that that instinct of being a little bit concerned about the overreach of a government is valid in the sense that governments do have real power and they have real ways that they can exert that power. And it's the same way with large corporations. Obviously, they also have extreme power. Shout out Twitch. Are we on Twitch right now?
Shout out Jeff Bezos, Overlord Bezos, and Overlord whatever your name is at YouTube, Google.
Yeah,
forget that name, Mr. Khan. I love you guys.
The alphabet group.
Give us some algorithms. Give us some filthy algorithms. What do we got to say? Say some woke phrases, Steve. No, sorry to cut you off. Continue.
Well, really. I mean, I'm just in AI. I mean, I'm a deep fake right now. This isn't even real. So
I told him I wanted to talk with him, and then I just actually am doing this whole interview by myself. I'm a master ventriloquist, and I know how to get this going.
Do you ever kind of step back and think to yourself, like, God, this algorithm knows me better than my wife knows me and knows me better than I know myself. Like, this algorithm knows exactly the stuff I want to see next. Like, I'm scrolling and I'm like, how did you know, algorithm? How did you know I wanted to see that? Thank you for giving that, like.
Bless you. Bless you, algorithm. You never feel alone with the algorithms, right? That one's going to lead me into a rabbit hole as well, which I do want to get into with you here. But just to quickly stay on base with the surveillance and their place in society, because once again this goes back to my just the basic human rights that I was talking about a little bit earlier. But when we start seeing these peeled back in normal instances, and there's not a lot of talk about the fact that it was there in the first place. And so that's why I don't know. Am I the one that's the only one thinking about that? Is there is that just a normal thing that we're cool now with? Let's have why isn't the government everywhere? So then if I get robbed or if a cop shoots a black, they'll use those very touchy subjects to normalize what would be tyrannical acts in the past. I always feel like I'm going crazy because I'm maybe Alex Jones screaming about tyranny, but tyranny obviously has evolved like we have. Tyranny's woke like we are. You know what I mean? It's really disguised itself in a lot of different forms, and you see these forms of extremism everywhere, which is why we really appreciated each other's talks, because even if we're on one side of a fence, we're still understanding that we're all two sides of the same coin. Where we're being driven, and once again, I'm going to try to take my opinion out of this. It feels sometimes that there are driving forces that are really trying to create that divide, and that just seems more and more apparent as we get into these ages with technology. As the Social Network said, Joe Rogan had that Aaron guy on that you were talking about. You and I both watched that. I think you watched the full thing. I watched about a bit of it, but you were the one that got me into the Social Network. I refuse to watch Netflix. But in the Social Network, they said exactly what you were saying earlier, where there's more incentivization to keep people engaged with content rather than which is why we should have done this nude. I feel like if we did this nude, algorithms, ladies, you know what I'm saying? This is.
I mean, Yeah, the question with that though is, would people have even listened to what we were saying? I mean, it's hard to focus, when we're not wearing clothes. I mean, focus on my words. I'm a person,
Not my four
okay?
nipples.
Stop
You know
looking
what I'm
at
saying?
this.
Yeah, just don't look at
Stop
my four
looking at this.
nipples. Come on. My face is up here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Yeah. No, I think that no. So the kind of the two things that you spoke to there are kind of this surveillance idea, which I think I want to circle back to that because I think that's the more interesting one.
Agree.
And then the other one is kind of something that has become more of a thing, which is like this agent provocateur type thing and whatever else. And people are concerned about this. Like you kind of mentioned this with Kenosha, but people are concerned about it with January 6th and with whatever. And it's essentially this theory that the government is playing this fun
It's
little
amazing.
game. Where
Sorry, there's a trigger. It's amazing, and everyone involved with that was a terrorist and out to kill every American. Algorithms. You January 6th terrorists fucking fighting for nothing. Sorry, I don't have an opinion on it. But you're absolutely right. The agent provocateur, and that's the Kenosha incident we mentioned earlier, was the bricks. I made a joke about it, about bricks being found, and then we heard a police scanner about them finding pallets of bricks in there. So continue. That's just wanted to.
This is something that unfortunately I think that Joe Rogan really focuses on a lot. He thinks that this is kind of the answer to many big questions, right? Which is kind of it's appealing. I get the appeal of it because it has that kind of movie dirtiness of like, we found the bad guy. Look at this dirty little breadcrumb trail they left behind. Ha ha. But it's really silly in the big picture because it's easy to find those breadcrumbs. If that's your strategy as a government, is to be so sloppy and to just leave bricks out and to have, actual FBI agents starting January 6th or whatever else, or in Kenosha, they're forcing people to run at Kyle Rittenhouse or whatever. I mean, it's something that if you think that there's this curtain that government is trying to place in front of us so that we can't see what's really going on, X, Y, and Z, to some degree, there's elements of that have truth. But if they were to use this agent provocateur strategy a lot, which it seems like, I mean, Joe Rogan seems to focus on it's happening all the time, it's a bad strategy because it's so easy to find it and so easy to say, look at how dirty this looks. And in that sense, I mean, the government's going to be smarter than that. If they're really trying to, to act in sinister ways and whatever else, they're not going to be sloppy. They're not going to have, legit,
they're
just
trained
like
hitmen. They're trained hitmen and agents who go into countries with hit squads and Navy SEALs. They're not going to be like your average Joe. I'm with you. And I'll just clarify an argument then, and just play a devil's advocate on this end. So understand Joe Rogan does all that, but let's take government out of it, right? Even though that's very hard for me to do. But because now we know in this day and age, people with money have influence, right? So instead of saying the government is always the one who's at it, or we know that there's a lot of bad actors in the world, right? I think we can all say that not everyone means good, right? We don't have to have rose-colored glasses. I think a lot of people who say the government is out to finitely kill them and just control them and make them lose. And then there's the other side that it's like, you guys are crazy. This is the way the system works. My problem with this, which with all bipartisanship, is when you have these polar views or these polar talks, there's never any conversation in the middle about a breadcrumb, right? So we can see like, the government's not going to be sloppy like that. Or, the government's always out to get you. When something happens, like those bricks in Kenosha, for instance, those didn't just show up. Somebody put them there. The government didn't. The Kyle Rittenhouse's mom probably didn't. But like, maybe she seems like a bitch. I don't know you personally, Mrs. Rittenhouse, but you're not painting a nice picture. My mom would fucking have some words for you. Shout out to my mom. But for real though, like these things do happen, right? There's a lot of stuff we can't just ignore it. And that's where I get a little bit loud. And I in the past, I understand I get a little bit over the top because I'm trying to tug people. If it was a tug of war, I feel like someone's already on this and I'm just trying to overtug. And realistically, I just want to back up and say, when we see some of the things like the bricks, do we ignore it and say nothing's happening? It's crazy. It's a breadcrumb. You're grasping at straws. But if we see a pattern of that, like when is enough enough? When do you step in? When do we start questioning as a society? Because that's my problem. It seems like everything seems to be misdirected anger. And we have these groups that we're going to direct the anger. And then when something happens, maybe it doesn't fall into a group, or we can't identify who the thing is because maybe they're operating behind we don't know. But instead of asking questions, prosing topics, and just talking amongst the two sides who both have individual views on it, we're vilifying the other side, right? Which is a horrible strategy. We can't say Joe Rogan is always this. We can't say this is always that. You can't say I'm always one way. You can't say you're always one. You got triggered the other day when I said pro system, because and hindsight, when I'm saying that, I'm putting you into group, and you have aspects where you don't think the system is fully on your side, and you have aspects you're not, as we all do. There's 7 billion points of view in the world, and we always try to group it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what I'm saying? It's insane. But at the same time, I never want to let the little individual things that happen off the hook. I really feel like, for instance, you and I, if you were to do something stupid at school, it gets held accountable to you. If I were to do something, I were to speak out against a boss in the corporate world, I were to do something to a client, it gets held. We have a level of accountability to us. If you go shoot a couple people in the street and kill them, you'll get off, and there's no account. Just kidding. Bad time for that joke. There's no accountability in some of the things because we're too busy fighting, squabbling amongst each other. So I'm trying to figure out myself, and I honestly, I think that's the gazillion-dollar question: is how do we, as a society, try to raise our level of accountability to things we can't see, to agencies that seem too big, to corporations that have overreach that now run a lot of society, to pharmacy, to medical. I can go on. There's a lot of organizations, and I think that's where you and I initially started to butt heads, because it sounded like I'm saying everyone in the medical field is corrupt. And I'm not saying that, but I'm saying when we do see corruption in it, we're letting them off the hook. And I want to know how, as a society, and I always break this down into media because it's my expertise. How do we do that in media is where I always focus on. Where would you start in trying to get people out of that vilifying aside and holding more accountability? Because the law side of things is like, that's why I love this case. We can talk about the law of it. We can talk about what our society deemed appropriate and fundamental, and everything outside that should be questioned. I believe, like, everything that we've deemed outside, if it's a government overreach, they're not the do all be all, right? If they're doing, if they go against what they were put in office to do, we need to hold them accountable to it. And it doesn't matter if he's a robot or if he's a big Oompa Loompa. It shouldn't matter if he's a hologram or a Ninja Turtle, whatever you want to call these guys, these political figures. But there's no accountability to, like, and I don't want to use the word elite, but when we're talking about like a class system, there seems to be a lot of people that will get out of a lot of accountability to a lot of things. Did I go overboard there?
Well, you talked about a lot, that's for sure. So
I
I don't know
always
if
do.
we'll really be able to touch all the points, but I do want to circle back just to, I think that this BRICS idea is a really good example, right? That's a really
Cool.
good
Yeah, let's go back.
thing that we can kind of analyze from all sides. So if we really break it down, in my mind, the first bar that is that's essential to clear, and many people clear this bar in their mind very quickly, right? And this bar is this even something real? Is this even a real pattern? Is this even something out of the ordinary? Is this something I should even be concerned about at all, right? So you have, I mean, the way that things are laid out, during these protests sparked by the George Floyd killing, there were many protests, and
R.I.P. that.
and some of these protests, there were things going around the internet saying at a lot of these protests, there are these big pallets of bricks showing up right by the protest, and they just got moved in there and whatever, all these things, right? And different posts have different things. Some posts say, I saw this guy do it. Some posts say, oh, they just showed up overnight in the dead of night, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of things to dig into there. First of all, how much do we trust something that we just see on the internet, right? If someone just shares a picture that looks like 3 different things of bricks, is that even the same city? Are these just the same picture that's been changed digitally? I mean, there's a lot of things to consider basically before you even get, like I said, there's the bar that I'm talking about, the bar of, okay, I can confirm that there were bricks, right? And there's a pattern. What is that pattern? The pattern is there's a planned protest. It's going to be a big protest. The day before the protest, bricks aren't there. The day the protest is happening, bricks are always there. It happens 5 times in 5 different cities. Okay, so if you can clearly find those facts, if you can clearly say, I have good evidence to say these facts are real, not just based on something I saw on whatever, or, I mean, like, if you can really hone down and say this is happening, whatever, then you have to move to the next step. And the next step is, well, there are protests in a lot of cities, and whatever.
A lot of cities.
What's that?
A lot of cities. A lot of protests going on right now. May or may not be.
Protests in a lot of
put on the news right
cities.
now.
So, right. So is 5 things of bricks? Does that even rise to the level of a true conspiracy? Right. So it's just the idea of, I mean, there is a thing called a conspiracy, and it's not a dirty word. It's not a bad word.
Totally.
There is such a thing called a conspiracy, and it's when people are coordinating something behind the scenes in the dark. They're conspiring with each other to make something happen, and you don't know about it. So this is something happening in the shadows, and we need to kind of pierce the veil and see these actors behind the scenes and what they're trying to do in the situation, right?
So Steve, you bring up a really good point, and I hope you can continue after this, because there's 2 things that I want to stop. One is the bar that you speak of. And I agree with you. People need to learn how to friggin' vet information online. Like the level of just absolute foolishness out of 99% of the people is crazy, right? However, I'm gonna go ahead and just devil's advocate one more time. If you do see stuff like that, right? Say you get that, you do have the confirmation of it now, right? You do see that, and conspiracy. You have to keep me on track here, Steve, because I'll go a million different routes with this. Because the conspiracy thing I want to get into as well, the word conspiracy, what we automatically will deem something as a conspiracy theory, and boom, it's in the world of folklore instead of the world of like, there was like 3 videos, like, right? The Astro World thing was a weird one. I don't want to get into that, but like we see 3 videos online, or 4 videos, 5 videos, whatever it is. You see videos of like, right in the moment, these people, and everyone's after views on the internet, so everything's a lens, right? You have to be a smart adult here and use everything at your knowledge, right? You have to know that you're getting algorithmed. You have to know that your confirmation bias is trying to keep you online. You have to know that everything you've touched, looked at, or said is now going to be kind of shone in that light to you in that way. You have to understand that. But when you see things like this, is why I am broken, right? I'm a real, I like to understand things in the way that I see it, hear it, touch it, taste it. If I can see something and then someone tells me I don't see that, I have a problem with that, right? Which is, we can get into fact checkers after this. So when you're trying to determine what it is there a lens? And I'll even challenge you on this. The people who want to say that, are they even looking at it with a lens with, you think everything's a conspiracy, so therefore everything's not a conspiracy, right? Because like, if there's things that happen, this goes back to the point of ignoring it because it will fit your side, or me ignoring that it always happens because I don't want to ignore the fact that you just could be like a crazy person, right? We could just have like a guy who wants a pair of shoes from Nike. So he's like, I'm going to put bricks here, right? Because they're going to break this Nike store and I'm going to go in and get my kicks, right? We don't know. I don't want to say that's like Hillary Clinton doing this. It's crazy. But I'm saying at the when there's stuff happening, how do you ignore just facts without pointing the finger, right? Because that's where I think we're so quick to say, like, here comes those conspiracy theorists again. Here comes those Trump supporters. Here comes those sheeple. Whatever it is, whatever side you're on, you vilify the other side. You've labeled them, and now you're going to march towards it, and you refuse to budge, right? So, like, I'm showing you, it's like, actually, it's like it has a picture. They use those what do they call those Snapchat geo filters, so you see exactly where they are. They like pinned it on a map, like you see everything about it. They've done it, and now what do? One side's gonna say that's the conspiracy theorist, one side's gonna say that's the government coming to kill you. People in the middle who just put those bricks down are scot-free. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my point, is how do we figure out, because the fact checkers unfortunately are in pockets. Like you have to understand that as well. And I'll be very vocal on this in a way that I'm not going to be opinionated, but everyone's got a job that gets their money paid for. Okay. And in media, especially, doesn't matter if it's routers or anything, they all move up to shareholders. Everyone, the CEO, the editor, the publisher, they all have someone to answer to. Everyone. And usually we don't see those people, hear them, especially as employees of the organization, the journalists, everybody. They don't see, they're invisible. Like you said, it feels almost conspiratorial because it's some people saying stuff that would be behind the scenes that we don't hear it to have a certain agenda, which is almost how I define the media these days. And once again, if we want to go down that road, we'll go down that, but I get too distracted. So get back into the into the way of what we're seeing. And I guess the bricks one is a little too it's a little too we're pointing a finger. And I want to get out of those situations and maybe find something that we can find that's a general, and that's almost impossible these days, man. Find something that everyone can just kind of get on the same page, which goes to the whole societal bipartisanship. I don't know, man. I'm just feeling like almost lost these days with conversations, right? It's, you try to get objective about things. You try to get out, and either you'll get triggered, tripped, or forced your opinion into a group, and then you find yourself defending a group just because you're defending yourself, and the things you say happen to match other people, and then that matches it, takes the greater form. I just feel like we're losing a lot of the conversation, and the people that are in charge, conspiracy or not, who have control of big tech, who have control of censorship on the internet, who have control of sponsorship of dying companies right now, who are sucking dick for money all over and just getting grants to get sponsored. And then, hey, I also need you to talk about this. So there's a lot of stuff going on with people being manipulated just by money, and it falls under these conspiracy theories when a lot of it is indeed, if not fact, has elements of fact to it. So I guess, how do we unmask these monsters, Steve-O? It's so frustrating.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you're speaking directly to this concept of elites and powers and people like that. And I think that it definitely makes a lot of sense, in the sense that these powerful people, they are incentivized to keep things operating in a certain way, right? They want the modes and actions of society to operate in a way that continues to benefit them, right? So, I mean, sometimes these people come from very little, or sometimes they're already establishment figures, but they like the society that has elevated them to a position of power. And their goal is typically to enshrine that society, or keep certain elements or enhance certain elements of that society, so that they can basically maximize the benefit for themselves, kind of like what we all do.
Yeah, it's pretty basic and well, just platform, no opinion on it. It's just people have an incentive to continue their lifestyle and improve. I think that's the capitalism nature of what we've said, you were talking about earlier, where it's all, we're just growing at whatever rate we can for profit and position.
Yeah, and in my perspective and in your perspective, when, if we want our life to get better, the way that we do that is by controlling our own behavior, right? That's the easiest way for us to improve our lives, is for us to move about and let's say work harder, do this, do that, whatever. That's not the case for people that are at much higher positions. They've already kind of maximized the ability that they can to do their own thing. You know, this conception of like Elon Musk is working, 100 hours a week and that's why he's so rich or whatever else. That's not true. He's rich based on a system that continues to benefit him. So his behaviors, he's not changing his personal behavior every day. His goal is to control the system that exists below him in order to supplement him into a better position. So that's kind of what you're speaking to with these conspiracies, right? This conspiracy mindset is there are these people kind of at the top that are reaching their hands down because they've maxed out what they can do, and in order to keep improving their position or hold on to their position, they need to control the elements below them, right? That doesn't happen for me. There's no one below me that I'm I'm controlling anyone that's going to benefit my life. If I impact someone else's behavior, that's not going to help me, really. So you and I are in a very different position than that, and it's important for us to speak out to those things where there are powerful individuals trying to make things happen, where they're controlling those mechanisms. But I think where the mind typically goes is that, the way that the way that our mind works is that we think, they do control people, which they do. We just established that these people at the top, they control people. But then we think anything bad that happens in society or anything bad that happens to me or whatever else, that's because they controlled it and they wanted it to be that way. But it's important to remember that people at the top don't want to break society, because society as it exists today is what keeps them at the top. If everything is broken and if people are in riots and civil war starts and whatever and blah, 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 there may not be a society that these people are going to be on top of anymore. So they are conspiratorial in the sense that they're controlling the mechanisms of society to benefit them fundamentally, but they're not controlling it in a way to just break society or intentionally harm people typically or whatever else, unless that intentional harm can cause some greater benefit to them. But typically, going out and murdering people or whatever else, that's not going to come back and help my pockets as a powerful person. That's going to make typically it's not.
I don't think I don't think you can say that with 1,000,000,000% positivity, but I'm with you 1,000,000,000%, right? I'm with you there. The conspiratorial aspect is people trying to keep status quo for themselves, and they continue on to do so in a less evil way than people think. But at the same time, this is the line I dry hump daily, right? Like, as I understand like how society works, right? I'm not oblivious. Like, this is literally since the beginning of civilization, we've had a ruling class or some like government, a hierarchy, that will go ahead and put onto a lot of the ways to keep status quo, right? You keep people civil, you set down laws, you get people to fundamentally not kill each other, work for each other, with each other, all the stuff that the founding fathers told us, right? But then there's that other side where people are doing them, but where do we draw the line of what's right and what's wrong for the people with the power and the money? Because let's use something less crazy, because the killing and like, the big pharma's killing everyone, like, take all that out of it. This is what I say. Let's erase extremism on both ends, right? Let's erase the sheeple. Let's erase the government's out to kill you. Let's just talk about in the middle there. Like, we have Amazon, who's notoriously famous for, this is on Twitch. We have not Amazon, which is not notoriously famous for mistreating their employees, driving out local business, bastardizing prices, creating an inviable market, getting government bailed out so he can buy his fucking MGM studios. What a guy, man. Overlord Bezos is my fucking idol. But we have these guys doing these things, and where does it become an issue where we're like, okay, why does it seem like a few people are standing hand in hand with government while the rest of people are like shutting down businesses and not getting the help? Like, it just seems like there's an imbalance in this. And I'm with you on the fact I don't want to get into the conspiratorial vilification, because let's just take this into what everyone can digest in a normal way, right? We have like a society that a government society that doesn't tax rich people, and I don't want to get this into tax the rich AOC kind of shit, because I think that's its own form of propaganda. I want to talk about like what is, because it doesn't seem like anyone's playing a role in governing these people. It doesn't seem like big tech has anyone, like they are running governments. It almost feels that way because their audience, their reach is so much that a government doesn't have the power to say, we can't have you in our country unless you're a certain someone who will be all of our overlords within the next 5 years. But unless that happens, like we don't have anyone holding those people accountable, because there's the thing like, why don't you go make your own Twitter? Why don't you go make your own Facebook? And it's like, well, go and try right now, and you're going to find out, like, Parler had troubles getting, because they have to use Amazon servers. There's like the fundamental aspects of society now have been set up by a few. And unless you're playing in these sandboxes, you don't have an opinion. You don't have a say. You don't have a lot of anything in society. It feels like people are getting increasingly powerless to these growing corporations with their growing reach, getting into every area of life, that it feels suffocating to an extent. And it doesn't feel like we're being heard anymore unless we have these radical voices, which is where if I'm doing some self-reflection, I even talked about this with my parents. I took a course with Landmark. Shout out Landmark. It was a free ad. In your self-reflection, you understand why you tell yourself these stories, why. And I always feel like I'm never being heard. And talking to a lot of people, it always feels like no one's ever being heard. And then you have to get these grandiose opinions. You have to get these crazy things. I have to tell you, I have to convince you that something is, instead of just, once again, stating stuff that's there and not looking at it with every other lens. Don't say government. Don't talk about Alex Jones. Don't talk about Joe Biden. Let's talk about the issue. And when can we say what's right and what's wrong instead of having that decided for us? Because it seems like when stuff is decided for us and we don't agree on it as a society, it almost feels like it's a fake democracy. And I want to use that term very lightly, because we still, you know what I mean, right, Steve? I don't want, you know how I'll go down this, and I don't want to use fake democracy in that way. I want to use it. It feels like it's undermining it when it pretends like we have opinions, but we can't actually voice them. You get what I'm saying?
I do. I do. I really appreciate I think what would be really interesting to talk about from a more, what can we do, we here on this channel, we who are watching the video, everyone wants to improve and do something better. And I think that you pointed to self-reflection and kind of knowing what's happening, starting with understanding why are you feeling the way that you're feeling, and what's driving the way that you're thinking, and then being able to, once you've done that, express that clearly to others. And when you're trying to say something, and if they say something that shows that they're not listening, or that they're seeing things from a way that you aren't seeing them, being able to kind of step back and say, how do I explain this more clearly? How do I express the fact that I feel like I'm not being heard? How can I express that in a respectful way that will help hopefully make me be heard in the future? And what's kind of the essence of what I'm trying to say? What's not being heard? And am I speaking it clearly enough? I mean, these are kind of basic, introspection, communication things that people don't really excel at. I think it's something that you excel at, more than most, and even you struggle with it. You went to class and you got
we all do, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's good to talk about these big things, and to talk about Rittenhouse, and to talk about conspiracy, and talk about large actors in the systems of democracy. But I think that getting down to, how can I feel better tomorrow than I feel today? And how do I put myself on a path that is going to make me feel purposeful in my life. I think, very little of that is going to have to do with Rittenhouse or large powers and conspiracies and whatever else, even though I understand the desire to dig into those things, right? Because when you say, I want to make a difference, why not shoot for making the most difference you possibly can? If you say, I'm going to make a difference and I'm going to eat more vegetables, no one's gonna praise you and say, look at you, you're such a good person for eating more vegetables. But it's hard. I mean, even something that small is so hard to do. But we're realizing that society is not going to praise us just because, I'm not going to go be able to brag on Facebook about how I ate vegetables today. You know what I mean? No one's going to be like, what a guy.
We will, and we do. And
Really?
shout out to all you absolute painful people. You've hit the nail on the head, Steve-O, and I think this is kind of my personal journey that I've realized is, and I knew the words, but I never understood it enough. And it's a very ancient proverb, I believe, by the man Buddha, which is change yourself, change the world, or Rumi, one of the two. Somebody look that up for me. Change yourself, change the world. And I think a lot of the things that we see, this is going to get deep, and I haven't really voiced this. I just kind of thought about this. A lot of the things we see, if I'm going to reference the Bhagavad Gita, somebody also make sure I get that one. Bhagavad Gita. Shit, I'm brown too. That book, it talks about a war and a guy going to war with an enemy, when realistically that entire war is within. And that's what Kabbalah says. That's what a lot of these Hermetic saying is, you go on a journey through your life to change your life. And I almost feel like a lot of these wars we see are battles within our own mind that are replaying out in Earth, that we have to figure out the answer to conquer it. And us pacifying and like just saying like being really like, that's like the people that are saying, I don't follow media right now. Well, unfortunately, if you're even watching this, you're following something. You're looking at something. You're opening up to opinion from an outside point of view, which in current day is sadly a form of media or influence. Where a lot, and I think you nailed it on the head, was a lot of people are looking for answers instead of doing any type of introspective looking at what that would mean to them. How could they? Okay, cool, buddy. You think this is going on? What are you going to do about that within your own life to change it, to make a better world? Because if you believe in it, I'm with you. I'm honestly with you, and I mean that for everyone. Even if your thing is to take down the real fake talk show, that's your thing. But it's your thing, and you believe in it. I'm 100. He's coming from my job. Day one. Well, this is going real well, Steve. Honestly, man, I really do appreciate your opinions, and I really, really, really love that in going down that path of self enlightenment. How do you make yourself a better? Because realistically, if everyone focused on that, we'd be in such a better place than we are right now. Really, really would. And I think you had a YouTube channel where you talked about that. It was one of my first thing that I thought about you. He's like, we had such different point of views, but you break that, you take everything away, take down every veil, take down Canadian, US, take down everything. It's like, what we're literally here to get people to understand we're so much more alike. We really are, and we can do so much more together. We can bring so many more different ideas. Everyone's perspective matters, and it will encourage everything. The Illuminati shit I'm working on right now is all about how your thoughts are literally creating actual energy. So if you think of a frequency goes so fast you can't see it, right? There's like air, it's operating at frequencies we can't even see, we can't perceive. Sound, there's certain sound things, human ear, a dog whistle is a good example. There's certain frequencies you can't even perceive. Your thoughts create physical frequencies that manifest into your reality. And I think like a lot of like positive thinking, it's like that if they talk about it in a better way, you're creating your own reality. When I'm vilifying myself for being a minority in a certain way, I'm making myself a minority in a certain way. And if I'm saying, oh, the world's out to get me and the government's out to get me and the FBI's out to get me, and I'm creating that reality very, very clearly for myself, which then creates a real reality around me, which will affect someone else, get them to think that way. And it's a bad, 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 bad downward spiral. And the only way to get out of that seems to be the journey inwards. But I guess where I've been stuck is just, like I said, it's so hard to just turn the eye away from the things. And I guess that's the Aquarian in me, Just always
Mhm.
looking for everyone to have that same sense of justice. Because don't think that I don't get angry when you see unarmed black males getting shot for no things. Don't think I don't get angry when you see white people being mistakenly just convinced that they're racist right across the board. Like on my channel in Twitch, I used to like constantly joke about being racist to whites, and whites would like just be like guilty about it. And I was like, this is kind of proof. Like, this is crazy. This is crazy. And I'd like to point everyone to Apple Music to go to Rage Against the Machine's page. Rage Against the Machine has an absolutely fantastic documentary out right now called Killing in Thy Name, and talks about how racism is genuinely just given to us. We learn racism. No one is born racist. That's crazy. And a really eye-opening documentary on that subject. But bringing it back to just the self-reflection and the human thought is, you and I think, agree on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is when we can start to figure out why we think the way we are, question ourselves first, then you can bring those questions to other people. Like when I question the media, I am questioning myself. I'm putting myself back 10 years ago when I was in that organization. I saw if you put an article through, it got vetted, it went through an editor, the editor went to the publisher would like say, hey, this is going to run, this isn't going to run. We had a local publisher, we'd go in, we'd have conversations on what we're going to talk about, what's in the news, the political things coming up. We had like everything was planned. This isn't conspiracy. This is a fucking multi-million-dollar organization that runs at full tilt. Then within that 10-year period, we saw, like you see in everywhere, this isn't even conspiracy again, this is cost cutting, right? You saw a lot of these bloated positions just get taken out. Publisher gone, editor gone. Now everything seemed like it was a digital path with a faceless person. So you're submitting stuff. So it took a lot of the personal part of the thing, where we had these people who had to earn their position up through integrity, through showing their work to get to these, are now being replaced by faceless figureheads, AI. Like literally a lot of my other job, where I was working at a telecom company, we were out. My job was to go into business and tell them to outsource their people and pay us for our AI or our system to do it. It's a tough time to be a middle person in a corporation right now. But I'm getting off track again, but it just seems like a lot of the power in a way is getting taken from us, and we're letting it. Did I circle that back?
Yeah. Well, we were talking about introspection. So, but we have two threads. We have the kind of we're communists, so we always have the power thread in our mind. We're always considering power dynamics because I know you. And then the self-reflection. Something from the self-reflection that I heard recently, someone, I was going to look this up, a quote from a philosopher, essentially saying that the world is always inhabited by a single consciousness, and then the rest are actors. And so, the way that
who the fuck said that, Steve? I love that more than anything. That's getting written down.
Great one.
I love that.
Let me just
there
find
is
the
one
philosopher.
source of consciousness, and the rest are actors.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. That was probably fucking Hermes Trismegistic. I don't know what his symbol is. I gotta find Hermes' symbol out. While Steve's pulling that up, we do have a live chat on that has been Stop Burning Me for 45 straight minutes, which is really nice. If you guys got any questions for what we've been talking about for Steve-O, please put them in the chat. We'll get to him in good time. And Steve-O, please continue with this philosophy. I love that so much, man. There's one consciousness and everyone else is actors. I love that.
Right, exactly. I mean, essentially, it's essentially the idea that in the perspective of each person, in your perspective, in my perspective, we always see things from our own consciousness and then build the world out from there. So everything, we center ourselves in our minds, in our own consciousness, and then make sense of the world as an extension of how we perceive reality, right? So to some degree, it's extremely difficult for you and for me to look at someone like you and recognize that from your perspective, you've constructed an entire world out of your own consciousness, and you're perceiving me as outside of that, right? I'm some other individual. I'm just an individual that you know, along with other individuals that you know, or whatever else. But it's, you know, it reminds me of the idea that every person is the hero of their own story, you know? And it's the same thing with consciousness. Everyone's always thinking of things in a way of, this is what the world is because it is what it makes sense to me or based on my experience or whatever. So it really, in my mind, it really kind of hones in on this idea of like lived experience and perception and whatever else. Obviously, lived experience sounds like a silly phrase sometimes when people say it, oh, lived experience, whatever. But it makes sense because the world that I see might be different than the world that you see. And this is really enhanced by social media, right? When we create an ecosystem where the world is so versatile and mobile and whatever else, if I hear about the Rittenhouse trial, I'm living in my ecosystem on social media that has perspectives and bubbles and narratives and whatever. And then if you hear about the Rittenhouse trial, you have a separate ecosystem. And sometimes you'll hear facts that aren't even in my ecosystem, and I'll hear facts that aren't even in your ecosystem. So we're inhabiting two separate realities. And how can we even talk to each other when
We have
we're
multiple
in these
realities all over, not even two, right? Let's say everyone has their own
Right.
reality. It's 7 billion
Exactly.
individual realities being forced into certain ways. Yeah, you nailed it on the head there.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean that we can go from there. I can go into the conspiracy talk angle then too, or not. I don't want to call it conspiracy. It sounds bad when I say it.
Yeah,
But
I know. We
think
have to use that word because, and that's
Yeah.
part of the problem, right? Is we have a word that we talk about unjust conspiracy. We have about overreach. It's conspiracy. We have it like, and that's kind of the point we were making earlier, where it's like we need to stop talking about radical sides and just talk about situational things as they come. Because I know, like I said, I know you do have that. Like there should be a role in society, and because we're in new territory with social media, that doesn't mean that they don't have a role. They shouldn't have laws that go against them. Like somebody pull up facts on teen suicide rates in social media is up. We don't address that very often. It's not a sexy topic until it is, until we want to push something for a minute. But there's so many problems with that have like being in your own echo chamber. They brought it up in the social dilemma. We bring it up, but it kind of goes back to my question. Is like, it almost feels like we're powerless and within a system to keep going. Like you can do self-reflection, of course. And self-reflection is what you need to do. That's the only way out of whatever you're in. You have to be the hero of your own story. No government you vote for is coming to save you. No trial outcome is going to make your life better. No music person on or a superstar or anyone online who says something is not going to change your reality. That is you. You're the only person who has the power to do that. Steve, by the way, based on everything you said, I'm so sure you are a Freemason. I'm so sure you're a Freemason. And you need to look up this book. And I don't even want to say it online, but the Kabbalion. Just check out the Kabbalion, and it's a book about that one consciousness. Well, not really the book on, but the teachings from before anyone. I think it's the oldest piece of literature, things that we can find, like the Emerald Tablets, the Hermetica. It's all about that one consciousness. And as soon as you realize the one consciousness that runs everything in this world is the same, which is really tough for me to grasp. Like your consciousness and my consciousness are just a different degree of one consciousness, but it's still all one consciousness. That's why when you said that, that line, there's one consciousness, everyone else is actors. It hit right home with everything I've been reading right now, because it feels like everyone is connected via this one consciousness, but it almost feels like an artificial divide that is being there. That it's like we don't need everyone to realize that we're the same. Because I do feel like, and that's where my anarchist heart comes in, where it's I do feel it's that diving board political cartoon where the speaker and the head dictator is standing on a diving board that's off of a cliff, and there's a bunch of people weighing him out on the other side, and they don't understand their power of themselves, right? They don't understand as like, we're damn big. Like, if any of us wanted to turn on it, like, we can easily do it. You want to stop following a baseball team? As a society, we can, and we do it with our woke culture and cancel culture. Shout out you social justice warriors out there. Yeah. So it just seems like right now we're all fighting an invisible enemy that we end up putting the face on to someone else that's not the person. Does that make sense? Right. Am I going crazy? I think I'm going crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Just to, I want to latch, I mean, not, even though you mentioned it in passing, the cancel culture, I want to talk about cancel culture and virtue signaling, because those are two things that I've been thinking about a lot. Obviously, we all think about a lot because it's kind of in our face a lot. But also, a quick tidbit, you mentioned the Masonic Lodge. Currently, I'm now a member of my co-working space. It's called the Lodge Co-working Group, and it is owned by the Masonic Lodge organization. Nice. No joke. Nice. No joke. We're in it. We're in it right now, guys. We're in it.
Yeah, I can tell by those shapes behind you, Steve. You might want to look up some symbology.
They're watching me.
I need to talk to my bud Stevie and Chops, and they got to give me some symbology over here. That some hidden symbols that will like manipulate people, some astro world entrance signs, and some frequencies that can play.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I would like it.
So you're just saying they're owned by the lodge, but like you don't have any like dealings with the lodge. Oh man, I'm like,
no, there's no weirdness. But I mean, people have called. Not to get, to another track, but people have called, the website that I built a cult. So maybe I'm just really culty, Masonic. I don't know. Who knows? Anyways, to focus on this cancel culture and virtue signaling, I think it's interesting that we pointed to, this metaphor with the groups of people and balancing each other out and whatever, and the power that you hold. And it's just funny that cancel culture and virtue signaling is so demonized. And I think the reason for that is because I think that cancellation and virtue signaling are great societal mechanisms that exist. It's weird that they're dirty words, and I get that they can be used kind of in dirty ways and whatever else and blah, blah, blah. But
and explain what you mean by demonized. I want to break this down because I want to make sure, because this is, like I said, everyone's going to take what you say and they're going to interpret it in their own lens. I want to know what you mean here, because I agree that it's demonized, but I also agree that it's a problem to an extent. So I want to find the poles. And I want to get in the middle here, right? That's what, because like there's the people that are saying it's demonized, that it's the end of society, it's ruining society, and then there's the people that are just like, this is the only way forward. We are the judge, jury, and you know what I mean? Like there has to be a medium in there, and so keep going. I just wanted to make sure what you meant by demonized, so we can just
So I think I'm not a sociologist, so I don't know, the reality on the ground for when it comes to the science of sociology or how these terms actually exist in that field. But by demonized, I mean that that many people use the words as swear words, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're commonly used in society as swear words or derogatory terms. And that's what I mean by demonized, right? Like it's something, all I have to do is say a word, and then you can listen to me and you can know, oh, they're the bad guy because I said that they love cancel culture. That, it's just, anyway, and the same thing, it flips. Other sides of the aisle have different dirty words that they use to make other people's, one side of the aisle, you say someone, they're a Nazi, and it's just, well, of course they're the bad guy, whatever. So it's just this idea of dirty words. And I'm not saying,
no, you're going out clear. I completely understand. And that's where I wanted to clarify is in what context you mean demonized. And it's the way that people like Joe Rogan, Dave should be like, cancel, like they're using it as a bad thing, when in reality, this is how we got, like, stop saying the N-word in just passing, right? Like, because we realized it has real world connotations that have real effects to real people. I'm with you on that. Right. And then the virtue signaling as well. I use that as a dirty term, right? I do. I'll be completely honest and transparent with you. I use it as a dirty word because I use it as the fact that I think we're incentivized to virtue signal, right? Like maybe you don't even feel some way, but if I say something, I get more likes, I get more content, I get more engagement, I get the clapper, right? Shout out Michael Che, your new special is awesome. It's not, but you know what I mean? Like the people are, instead of going like comedy, this is why I respect Dave Chappelle. I don't care what anyone says. He's actually using these incredibly divisive statements and topics, and then he's dissecting them, and people are bringing in their own terms, and they're bringing in their own lens on it. And if anyone listened to the special, we'll just use the transgender one. If anyone listened to the special, he uses the vilification of that within his own lens, taking it upon himself within how black people have been treated, how as society, and people have something wrong with that, which to me, as soon as you're putting it on your lens, you're doing that self-reflection. How are you going to come tell me what I live and how I view? It's really tough. Where it goes to the corporations who now sponsor this. I think there was a gentleman, Kyle Rittenhouse, said it is up to, if you're making money off of people, you are entitled to see what you want to do. So Netflix taking the stand for them and not canceling it. The Netflix things, everyone has their right to be loud. But where it gets blurred lines, let's call it, because I can't say definitively on this, right? I can't tell you that you actually truthfully believe in this or not. That's me putting meaning into your thing. Ben, my dog, I'm going to go beat him after. Just kidding, Peter. But for real, he's going to get it. One more. And then,
I gotta go. No,
that's what he's saying. You just realized I was interviewing a white. And jokes, Jesus. But for the virtual signaling, like it's hard to tell where they draw the line. But I guess it's just the incentivization process, right? Like you really do get incentivized. And this goes back to what the role of big tech is. If you were to have a certain opinion and that gets taken out, like you are now responsible for a one-sided argument. And that that's the one place I'll give cancel culture as credit. Although once again, I'll argue till the death, man. I'll argue to the death because I've seen things, right? I've seen things, Steve. And like, for instance, in media, this is one thing we have to protect against in advertising, because a lot of these advertisers, they'd ask if our click-through rates and our conversion rates were real, right? Like who's doing these studies for you? And it was funny because we were doing our own analytics and they love that. It's like, no. We just did the studies. Trust me, it's killing it. And they're like, well, we haven't seen the sales, but you're telling me that it's working? And I'm like, no, it's working amazing. So there's integrity within every level of everything. And there are such things as bot farms out there. Google had to really figure out what to do with bot farms, which was, if you can get an idea of this, they have a cell phone. There's my dog. They'll have, Ben! He's getting it. There's like 30 cell phones, and they're like almost glued together. And these guys are just going like this, and they're like literally just pressing it in a room full of these people. So like, let's say there's 1,000 people in the room, and they all have like 20 cell phones, and they're all just hammering stuff. That 100% is not conspiratorial. That's an industry in India or wherever. Shout out to all you countries with you bot farmers. But these are industries that have been highlighted. They're not known. They're not thing, but trust me, a CEO of a company who's spending a lot of money on advertising is making sure his shit is not being touched by bot farms. Otherwise, that's wasted impressions, wasted ROI, so on and so on. So when you know these things are in society, I just keeps going back, and it's just kind of a rhetorical question where it's like, this is, I guess, what keeps bringing all the divide up, and how do we, like, you hear the term ratioed, right? You're going to get ratioed. Well, if you know now, and once again, I don't know if anyone doesn't believe this, we can chat offline. We can go through things. So I hate just talking about things without sourcing it, but at the same time, I hate breaking flow of conversation to just pull up sources. But with bot farms, that does lead to, once again, we're just adding equations now. We're not going conspiratorial stuff. We know stuff's getting muted. We know bot farms exist. We know that people can get ratioed on stuff. So when we know all this, it's really tough to take a lot of what you see with a lot of credit. And that's why I really do appreciate the people like yourself, like me, pump my own tires, who can take stuff, even if you get wound up by it, even if it strikes an emotional barrier, you take 2 steps back, try to get outside of it from a third part, and look at it in every way you can, Put yourself in everybody's position. I love the law point of view, which is what's the motive, who has stuff to gain, like just using fundamental human, like, you know what I mean? A lot of the stuff you can figure out, like a guy who's posting conspiracy videos on Astroworld. Everyone's like, well, what does he have to gain? And the government has everything. Well, he has views and he has like fake clout. He has friends to impress. There is a whole world of incentivization for people to do this, or incentivization for people to do all these things. And it just feels like a runaway train, man. I feel like I'm asking the same question, so I'm going to stop asking it, but it just begs to wonder where we're going to go as a society with the metaverse, with all these things where now these guys are going to get more and more and more control. And I'm so happy I was able to have this whole conversation without bringing up Big Pharma, because we're definitely keeping that one for another episode. I don't even mind having you on it for it, but there is no gates along the way that seem to protect kind of just the fundamental basis of society. And with that, we're almost going into it feels like a personal state of we all have to just figure out how we're all the own judge, jury, and what's that saying? I'm brutalizing that. The jury, judge,
judge, jury, and executioner.
Thank you, sir. Executioner. I couldn't think of it.
Hopefully we don't do too. I'm not really for the death penalty, but that's a whole different thing.
I'm for the death penalty. Oh my God. I'm not even death penalty. I think we should just be killing more people in society. Like just public hangings need to be brought back. I think like there's too much dissent in this world. I think if you want to make a
don't tag me in this video. Wherever you post this, don't tag me. Just don't. I
really think that people should be no, man, I want to make a lot of these things a little bit obvious that we're being crazy, because like I feel like people say this stuff like super not kidding. You know what I mean? And like people really, really march with this forward. And, man, I just want to see some fun. I'm here for the laughs now. From now on, I've got a real and fake talk show where I'm going to talk about it in a real and fake manner. No one can distinguish if this is real or fake, so they can't judge me on it. And if they can, I'll just claim it's the other one, whatever they don't think. Just avoid problem like everybody. But at the same time, I really think it's important to have conversations with people that see the world different to you, which is everybody. Don't be. There's no one that sees the world like you, so don't ever feel like your voice, it doesn't matter. Even if it's very similar to an Alex Jones and people want to say, hey, you're Alex Jones. Don't let that stop you, because you still have something to say. Alex Jones can say a gazillion things. If he's true to what he's saying, fuck it. Let him be him and let him go and say what his things is. People need to be less scared of talking. That's all I want to say. Like, I don't care who you are. You need to be less afraid of telling your story, because your stories are what will actually make people understand things. I think that's what Steve and I are able to, like I said, there's a lot of things that should be on opposite sides of the fence, but through our stories and understanding of each other, we're able to realize that, man, we do want the same things. We just see different paths out of it, which is completely okay, because we have a whole different stage of life. Right? I was raised in a completely different country, completely different thing. There's so many different things that are there for to make us different, that we shouldn't pretend to be the same, and really, really, really talk about the things that are passionate to us. And I'm really proud of myself, pump my own tires one more time, for getting this out, because this has been something that scares me, man. Especially, you know me, I've been triggered a lot in the past with what you say, what people say, because this is kind of the whole point of society, is to trigger people and get you riled up, get you angry, and get you consuming different content and just become a useless watcher of what everything's going on. So I love the fact of taking back that power, talking about it, and just realizing, man, we're just people, and where you get your information is just a product of who you are. And I want to know how you got that, because maybe that will help me uncover how someone else who I think is radical to me thinks, and then realize they're not maybe that radical after all. You know what I mean? Maybe they're just doing the best they can, like every goddamn human on this planet. So that's all I got for this subject, Steve-O. I just wanted to thank you, number one, tell the people where they can find you on some socials. I didn't end up getting this posted. I'll put it in the description below if you want me to. But please, where can they find you?
No, for sure. I don't have my handles ready, unfortunately, but that's okay. But
just point to the screen. I'll edit them right here.
Perfect. There you go. You'll add them right there. There they are. There they are.
There they are.
They're not there for me, but they will be there. Magic, science. And I think, I mean, to follow up, I think that I appreciate you having the conversation with me. I appreciate you putting your voice out there. I think that what people should, not to put words into your mouth or to, put something on you, but I think that the real aspect of the Real Fake Talk Show is the fact that the conversations are real in the fact that we're passionate about the things that we're talking about. And I think that you're a very passionate person. And I think that the thing that balances that passion is the fact that you really just exude a lot of love for other individuals, a lot of empathy. And I think that that's perfect balance. I think that people that are passionate about their ideas but lack empathy, I think that those individuals end up demonizing the other side. And I think that if you have too much empathy but no passion, then people walk all over you. So I think that you've got kind of both of those critical elements. And the fake is not necessarily fake. It's more just having fun. So totally. I think that's what we take. In my mind, that's what I get from the fakeness. I mean, some people believe that the whole world is just simulation. So I guess maybe that's the fake element of it. This is all just happening in a simulation. It's possible. It's definitely possible.
It's as Joe Rogan says, it's entirely possible, right? It's absolutely entirely possible. And man, I promise you that's going to be a subject we cover in another episode. The simulation theory, not even simulation theory as much as like what I was talking about earlier about our mind creating our reality. I want to go deeper into that in my own like studies, and I want to talk about where we go with that. I'm just going to take a quick peek at the chat. Did anyone have any questions for Steve before we let him go? Just a bunch of incredible derogatory comments towards myself. Shout out to Idre, my cousin. Quill, that was fun. Chopsy, Stevie. Steve, a lot of positive comments I'm seeing here. Everyone appreciated your input, your compassion, your just honesty, man. That's the one thing I feel you're real. And when I feel like I'm having these conversations with a lot of people, I feel like they really don't come from an honest place. And this is where I use virtue signaling, right? I don't feel like you're virtue signaling to me. I have a problem when that gets in the way of honest conversation. That's where I vilify that word. And I never feel like you're doing that, right? You're not here to make yourself like, I'm going to be the second coming of right. And I want to make sure everyone who thinks that's never where you're coming from, which that's the main reason I respect everything you say and everything you do. And I'm the biggest fan of yours, man. I cannot, like I told you when we first met, to reinvent yourself after already being a successful person is incredible. To have a wife, a kid, a successful career that everyone thinks is amazing, to go and challenge yourself, to go and do better. I know that's why you did it, man. Like I said, I respect you. I love you for the rest of my life, man. I'm so happy we met over a video game channel. Shout out Twitch.
Yep. We should cut that part out because then that's gonna.
Yes. And there goes everything we say. Actually, not over Call of Duty either. We never have killed anyone in Call of Duty. We play medics in Call of Duty. I only revive people. I have a 0 KD.
Oh man,
this is going.
I'm on episode 1 of the Real Fake Talk Show. I'm feeling very privileged. People probably assume that we're like friends from birth. We grew up together, but no, we met on the internet. Watching Twitch brought us together. Thank you, Bezos.
Thank you, Overlord Bezos. And that just goes to show that it doesn't matter how you meet, where you meet, how long you meet. You can always find people that you disagreed with. I wish people knew our whole history, like we get at it. And it's always, like you said, I love that you said that. And that really made me feel good because I feel like I yell at people unneedingly, is that we always do it in the pursuit of compassion, unity, and respect, which I believe is your YouTube channel, which will be listed.
Right. Unity, compassion, and logic, but very close. Respect is a good one.
That's a given. That's a given.
Yep. Yeah, man.
Steve Oren, thank you so much for joining us, man. Look at how good he looks. You got dressed up. You got into a great place for it. He's going to change the world very soon if he's not already. My man, we will see you soon. We'll probably have you on in another episode if you are okay with it and we haven't completely ruined your reputation around campus. We don't know. We don't know.
Oh, no. No, people, I mean, my goal is to get 50% of people to worship me and 50% of people to think that I'm the devil. That's when you know that you've made it. That's when you know you've made it. So, but really that probably embodies a lot of ego and narcissism to even say something like that. So we'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. I cannot think of a better way to say it. I might clip that and make that just the intro channel. I like the point of this show is to get 50 people to love us and worship us, and the other is to get them to fear us like the devil. I want to be Joe Rogan. We all want to be Joe Rogan. We want to take horse pills and pretend we are alpha males and have everyone else feel inferior to us. I want to feel like if I can beat you in a fight, that I'm right.
Oh boy,
that's gonna get me cancel culture. Do your thing. Do your thing. And
the
now
reason why I'm wearing a jacket is because my arms are so small that I could never beat anyone in a fight. So I'm nowhere near the Joe Rogan level of just t-shirt with the guns popping out. It's just not me, guys. I'm more of like a, like the nerdy anti-Joe Rogan.
I like that. The Ben Shapiro, if you will. You hate that, don't you? You hate that, don't you?
It's not getting better. It's not getting. You're not.
Oh, I love these little things. I know your triggers as well, Steve-O. We're good friends for that reason. Last shot for questions in the chat. I heard healthy debates are so important. Great show. We had a lot of love for this, Steve. I hope the internet appreciates this as much as I did. Thank you so much for your time, my friend. And let's chat later on about other stuff we can't talk about here. You know what I'm saying?
Perfect. Sounds good.
Brother, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve O.R.N.
See ya.
Sound effects.
Do I hang up? Now?
You can hang up now. Yeah. I cut you off the video feed. And now we are going to cut up all your comments and make sure that they are against everything that you said. This is how editing works. And this is how, obviously, we're kidding. Thank you, Steve-O. I'll chat with you later, my friend. Appreciate you so much.
We'll talk to you later, man. Have a good night.
Steve O.R.N., ladies and gentlemen. Now this is the point in the show where we're about to hit our musical guest. She is a up and coming. Well, that was incredibly awkward. Obviously, we had some difficulties getting the timing right. So if you would like to be a musical guest on a future episode, please reach out to me via email, therealfaketalkshow@gmail.com. Otherwise, we'll try to get some more for future guests. If you stayed this far, you've had to have liked something. So make sure you're hitting the like button, subscribe to future content so we know you like this. Thank you once again to our guests, and we'll see you guys later. Appreciate you.